Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the all-new Ghost and Horror Stories video. As always, these entries come from that reddit.com website with their subsection called Free Horror Stories. I'll include the link for it below so that way you can check out this original story as is, and again, supposedly true when it comes to the information there. In this case, it has to do with yet another entry involving the strange phenomenon known as sleep paralysis. There's still a lot of debate associated with it, whether it truly is something just within people's minds or if there's another supernatural aspect associated with it. In this case, it's up to you to decide, but this story comes from a user. They wrote it about 2+ years ago. The user's name is Jordan Cox 23, and they labeled it as my sleep paralysis episode. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. I'll share exactly what they wrote and then give my final thoughts on it afterwards. So here's what they wrote. Just to start off, I am not a writer, so I'm sorry if I made any grammar mistakes or if something doesn't make sense. I know I can be a little jumpy with details sometimes. I hope you can enjoy and please be respectful. Now I guess onto my story. I am a 19-year-old female, and at the time that all of this happened, I was 17. So just to give some long and necessary background, I was and still am dating a guy named Kyle. That's not his real name, but go with it. We shared a small group of friends. We were all pretty close to each other. We did almost everything together, especially when it involved smoking weed and doing other harder substances. They were pretty chill and trustworthy friends, or so I thought. Anyways, one day 2 weeks before my junior year started, I was hanging out with the group at one of their houses, and I just so happened to fall asleep after a while of being there. I woke up probably about 5 minutes later to one of my friends touching my inner thigh. Just to note, I was the only female in the group, and my boyfriend wasn't there when this occurred. He was at a show choir practice, so he couldn't even have been there if he wanted to. When the friend touching me noticed I woke up, he immediately stopped, and I ran into the bathroom crying. I've been raped and sexually assaulted before, so just going through it again isn't the greatest feeling. And a few minutes passed by and I left the bathroom. I pulled one of my friends aside and told him what happened. His response shocked me. He said he saw what had happened, but he didn't stop him. I don't know why he didn't. I guess I'll never know. But that same friend told me not to tell Kyle because he didn't want any friendships ruined. Well, I obviously told Kyle after the show choir practice, and he was understandably pissed off. We've come to the agreements that we will no longer be friends with them anymore. And so a few days went by, still avoiding that group, and we would receive a lot of text messages from them, but they were shocking and hurtful messages saying I'm being overdramatic, that it's my fault that it happened, to just act like nothing ever happened, that he didn't really sexually assault me, and so on. I was pretty destroyed reading all those messages coming from those so-called friends, but for some stupid reason, we all became friends again when school started. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would we go back to that blank group of friends? I guess our only lame excuse is that we hate confrontation and we wanted things to go back to normal, and I wanted to feel normal again. Well, obviously, it wasn't the best idea taking back these friends, especially the one who touched me, because it started to really affect me mentally. I became super depressed. I developed really bad trust issues with everyone, including my boyfriend. I would constantly have panic attacks throughout the day. I started self-harming again. I was extremely suicidal, and I was failing all of my classes because I rarely showed up to school. The school attendants and staff had no idea what was wrong with me, and I would refuse to tell them and my family. But one day came around and I couldn't hold it anymore. I told my family, and at first they were really supportive, but then it quickly changed. I don't really want to go into the details, but for a long time I felt so alone. Well, later around November 2017, my boyfriend did something behind my back with another girl. He didn't cheat on me. He just sold some weed to her. But for some odd reason, I mentally got worse. I just didn't know how to cope with anything that has or was happening to me at that time. And so I started mentally abusing my boyfriend, like extremely bad, to where he hated himself. And I think at some point he even became suicidal. Deep down, it made me happy. I wanted someone to feel pain too, but it got so bad to where we broke up twice and then got back together the same day each time. Now, fast forward to around February 2018. One night, that's when it happened. I was having trouble sleeping and it was getting late. I also had school the next morning, so I was getting pretty frustrated. Finally, around 1 a.m., I started dozing off, and I found myself awake probably about 10 to 15 minutes later. I noticed a tall, dark figure standing across the room in my closet. At first, I thought it was my older brother messing around with me because he's done stuff like this before. But as I tried to say his name, I couldn't. That's when I realized I couldn't speak, couldn't move, I was paralyzed. So as I'm staring at this figure in my closet, wondering what the blank is happening, the figure suddenly starts moving closer to me. Then I noticed it kind of looks like it was floating towards me. I can feel myself panicking, but I couldn't move or say anything. So when the tall, dark figure reached the side of my bed, I kid you not, it bent over and grabbed my nose. Now, I couldn't breathe through my nose or mouth. I'm just staring at this dark figure. Its face was so close to mine, but I couldn't make out any features, and I can feel my heart trying to break out of my chest. My lungs were hurting like hell because I couldn't breathe. I legitimately thought I was going to die, but suddenly I quickly sat up, gasping for air, looking around my room for that figure, but it wasn't there. I was scared. I was so scared. I didn't know what just happened. I thought I just had the most realistic nightmare of my life. I mean, I guess that's kind of what happened. The next morning, when my boyfriend picked me up from school, I told him about the realistic nightmare. He said, "That's creepy," and that was that. A few weeks later, I brought it up to my older brother, and that's when he told me that I actually had sleep paralysis. I had no clue what sleep paralysis is, but after hearing his definition of it and doing some research, I was really freaked out. I read online that stress, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, and some other things can cause sleep paralysis. I realized that everything that had happened to me sort of recently played a big part in my sleep paralysis episode that night. I would be lying if I said I didn't have trouble sleeping for a while after that, but eventually I got over it. But every now and then, I do get a little nervous to go to sleep. Fast forward to now, 2020. Kyle and I are doing really well, better than ever. We are renting our own apartment. We have 2 cats. They are absolutely amazing. Our 3rd-year anniversary is next month, and we are extremely excited. On another note, September 22nd, 2019, I was diagnosed with extreme depression and anxiety disorder, but I now go to therapy and take medications to help with that. And I have never, ever felt better and happier. Oh, and just in case you were wondering, we are no longer hanging out with those blank friends anymore. And that's essentially how they end it. That's how they end that story. So what an interesting episode, no? An encounter, once again, having to do with sleep paralysis. It seems like this user gave that whole backstory to state, at least from a scientific level, that if all those conditions, all those items happening to her, both mentally and physically, were causing her to reach a point where she in turn created her own sleep paralysis, she was going with that angle. And then if you go with the other angle that it said it's something supernatural, you do read those stories that anything involving those dark entities, shadow people, and then other type of paranormal ghosts or whoever they are, they feed off of that negative energy. They're the ones that love that stuff. I remember reading stories about that, where people are at the worst part of their lives, and when that happens, that's when these things come by. They enjoy it. They enjoy the suffering that these people are having, and in turn seem to enjoy also the extra bonus of watching these people freak out whenever they see these entities right there by their bed, watching them, just basically scaring them, giving them the heebie-jeebies and so on. So it could be either way when it comes to this. At least with the user, they're going more on the lines of the scientific standpoint. I'm more on the line that it could be more of an entity, something else again, like the shadow person and so on, that saw this stuff and then realized this is a good target to come by, and then at least once, at least on that night, be able to do something about it, like feed off of that person's depression and anxiety, everything that were going off, and then ended that way. Luckily, though, of course, they never had another encounter. But it's interesting again that this was yet another encounter involving with sleep paralysis. Let me know what you guys think about this story. Post your comments below. Let me know if you've ever had an encounter like it. I do read your comments that others have mentioned about seeing these type of bad entities next to their bed at home late at night. And so I'd love to read if you wanted to share that information again or post new encounters, then post it below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.